when it comes to the NHS, it's crystal clear. The Conservatives on the side of patients, Labour on the side of their union paymasters. But now, the honourable gentleman simply doesn't have a policy when it comes to this question. If he wants, he talks about wanting to end the strikes. The question for him is simple then. Why does he not support our minimum safety legislation? We all know why. We all know why, Mr. Speaker. It's because he's on the side of his union paymasters, not patients.
Mr. Speaker, when I clapped nurses, I meant it. His response to the greatest crisis in the history of the NHS is to threaten to sack our nurses. His Transport Secretary says it's not the solution. His Education Secretary hopes it won't apply in schools. His own assessments say it could increase the number of strikes. The simple truth is you can't legislate your way out of 13 years of failure. Between 2010 and 2019, before anyone had heard of COVID, Prime Minister, the number of people stuck on the NHS waiting list doubled. Why do patients always wait longer under the Tories?
Mr. Speaker, this shouldn't be controversial. This shouldn't be controversial. The International Labour Organization supports minimum service levels. They're present in France, in Italy, in Spain. Normally, he's in favour of more European alignment, Mr. Speaker. Why not now?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister stands there and pretends that everything's fine. He is so totally out of touch. He needs to get out of Westminster, get out of Kensington, and Mr. Speaker, I don't mean...
It's a big day today in the House.
Lindsay Hoyle.
It's a very important day. We do want to make progress. Holding us up is not advantageous to any of us.
Telling off the Tory side.
Mr. Speaker, he needs to get out of Westminster, get out of Kensington, and I don't mean to Malibu, to the streets of Britain. Go there and tell people it's all fine and see what reaction he gets. The answer he didn't want to give, although he knows it, is 4% of cases, 4% of burglary charges are charged, 96% of theft and burglary cases not even going before the courts. Burglars twice as likely to get away with it now as they were a decade ago. They should be ashamed of that record. And that cul-de-sac in Armcorth has apparently seen 10 burglaries in 18 months, but only one of them has resulted in a prosecution. So rather than boasting and blaming others, why doesn't he tell the country when he's going to get the theft and burglary charge rate back to where it was before they wrecked policing?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me say North Yorkshire's a lot further away than North London.
Rishi Sunak's an MP in North Yorkshire, of course. That hilarious joke's bringing the house down, apparently.
Can I say...
Oh, now Lindsay Hoyle's up.
I like the lines as well, but I prefer to hear them rather than jeering. Come on, Prime Minister.
Not entirely sure that was Nasrin, though.
Minister. Now then, we are going to make progress.
No, he's back up again.
Mr. Shelbrooke will be buying the teas in the tea room if we're not careful. Come on, Prime Minister.
That's Alex Shelbrooke, Conservative MP.
And there'll be Yorkshire teas, Mr. Speaker. But since the Conservatives came into power, crime is down 50%, Mr. Speaker. Violent crime down 40%. Burglary, the Honourable Gentleman mentioned burglary down 56%. Why? Because we've recruited 20,000 more police officers. We've given them the powers to tackle crime, and we've kept serious offenders in prison for longer. All they've done is vote against greater protections for emergency workers. They've opposed tougher sentences for violent criminals, and they are failing to give the police the powers that they need. It's the same old Labour, soft on crime, soft on criminals.
Yeah. I've prosecuted countless rapists. On the Prime Minister, I want tougher...
Hold on. I am determined to hear the questions.
Lindsay
whether
Hoyle
it's
again.
the Leader of the Opposition, the Prime Minister. So I can... Sorry. I think you've got your first customer for tea. Mr. Kurtz, we keep having this little problem. We'll have no more.
Alan Cairns, I think,
No,
Conservative MP.
just a moment. So please, let's get through and let's just show some respect to both people at dispatch boxes. Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've prosecuted countless rapists and I support tougher sentences. But you have to catch the criminals first. And when 98% of rapists are not even being put before the court, that's a massive failure on the government. And if he wants to go to Armthorpe, which is in Yorkshire, why doesn't he go to that cul-de-sac when he gets out and about in Yorkshire and ask them about those 10 burglaries that haven't been prosecuted? The reality is, after 13 years of Tory government, they've done nothing on standards, neighbourhood policing has been shattered, and burglars and rapists walk the streets with impunity. It's the same every week from the Prime Minister, whether it's the cost of living crisis, crime running out of control, or the state of the NHS. Why is his answer always to tell this British people they've never had it so good?
Right, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me just address the issue the honourable gentleman raised, because I said at the time I respected the decision the police reached and I offered an unreserved apology. But for the avoidance of doubt, Mr. Speaker, at the moment that happened, there was a full investigation by a very senior civil servant. The findings of which confirmed that I had no advance knowledge about what had been planned, having arrived early for a meeting. But he doesn't need me to tell him that. He's probably spoken to the report's author much more frequently than I have.
Sue Gray, of course. It's like a weird cul-de-sac to disappear down.
We're all about cul-de-sacs today.
Luke, the Prime Minister needs to answer
Lindsay
the question.
Hall's up
He
again.
doesn't need you to... I don't think we need any more. Let's keep it that way. Prime Minister.
Is he beyond the Malibu?
Mr. Speaker, we're getting on. We're halving inflation by paying 50% of people's energy bills and freezing fuel duty. We're cutting...
And it's the same for this side. Mr. Gwynn, I don't need any more from the backbenchers
Labour
here
MP
either.
Andrew Gwynn now being told off.
Can I just say, let's come... Mr. Fabricant, not again.
Conservative MP Michael Fabricant.
He's going to name all 650
Today's
this
a very
way.
big day. Some important decisions are going to be taken. So please, I want to get this House moving on.
Stop talking,
Prime Minister.
Today's a very big day, so I need to be on telly as much as
We're
possible.
also cutting NHS waiting lists by resolving pay disputes and getting doctors back to work. And, Mr. Speaker, we're stopping the boats with a new bill to tackle illegal migration. That's a Conservative government delivering on the people's priorities.
Speaker, in 2010, David Cameron convinced Nick Clegg to drop his pledge on university tuition fees. Does the Prime Minister intend to take the credit for convincing the leader of the Labour Party to do likewise?
Prime Minister.
Rishi Sunak like that one.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for the question.
The Prime Minister had to correct the record on misleading claims he made about employment numbers. Can he provide a further update? Now he's cost 1,000 Tory councillors their jobs.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me pass on my best wishes to May as well for this weekend Eurovision. With regard to the local elections, Mr. Speaker, maybe I can just offer the honourable gentleman a tiny bit of advice from one of his predecessors, one of his predecessors, Tony Blair, who I was reading the other day. What did Tony Blair? He said the right honourable gentleman can be as cocky as he likes about the local elections. Come a general election, policy counts. And we know, Mr. Speaker, the problem for him is he doesn't have any.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure to welcome yet another Deputy Prime Minister to the dispatch box. The third deputy that I've faced in 3 years. And you know what they say? The third time's a charm. And I'm also pleased to note, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister has a working class friend, finally. I seem to remember that after the loss of 300 Conservative seats at last year's local elections, the right honourable gentleman resigned, saying someone must take responsibility. After 1,000 more Conservative councillors had been given the boot by voters, who does he think is responsible now?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of the Right Honourable Lady's opening remarks, can I just say it really is a pleasure to see the Right Honourable Lady here today. I was, though, expecting to face the Labour leader's choice for the next Deputy Prime Minister if they win the election, so I'm surprised that the Lib Dem leader isn't taking questions today. And, Mr. Speaker, you will forgive me, Mr. Speaker, you will forgive me if I take the Right Honourable Lady's predictions with a pinch of salt. After all, she confidently predicted that the Right Honourable Member for Islington North would one day be Prime Minister. Remember, this is a man
Jeremy Corbyn,
who wanted to abolish the army, scrap Trident, withdraw from NATO and abandon Ukraine. And what did she say to that? She couldn't wait for him to be Prime Minister.
The right honourable gentleman opposite, while working in Number 10, said he had to listen to the radio every morning to find out what was really going on in the country. Apparently, he was surprised on a daily basis by what he learned. And most of his time was spent on day-to-day crisis management. 11 years on, Mr. Speaker,
it's a bit long.
Nothing has changed.
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm not quite sure what the question was there, Mr. Speaker.
That was a bit of a gift.
But if she wants to talk about this sort of thing, we all know what's going on with her and her leader. It's all lovey-dovey on the surface. They turn it on for the cameras, but as soon as they're off, it's a different story. They're at each other's throats. Mr. Speaker, they're the Phil and Holly of British politics.
Now, I know the Prime Minister has his own private GP, so maybe he doesn't appreciate the urgency. But he's left people like my constituent Carol waiting for over a year for an urgent appointment, moved from waiting list to waiting list with appointments cancelled again and again. So if not now, when will waiting lists fall?
Order. It'll continue till I hear the end of this question. The more, if I get any more interruptions, it'll take longer. Answer the ready.
Mr. Speaker, they don't want to hear the question because they know the answer. They know the answer is that they failed the British people. So when will waiting lists fall?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I would gently say to the Right Honourable Lady, if she cares that much about access to our healthcare, why is she opposing our minimum service levels? They will provide core emergency services with vital cover during healthcare strikes. Does she not think that vulnerable patients deserve that level of care, or is she too weak to stand up to her union paymasters?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Can I just say to the members, the member was in the middle of asking a question. I think it's disrespectful to your own side. You should think about what you're doing. And can I just say, people should wait. Just because you want to cheer somebody coming in, do it at the right time. Totally inappropriate. Come on, Marco.
If anyone wants to see what uncontrolled immigration looks like, all they've got to do is wake up tomorrow morning, listen to the headlines and see what this government...
Order. Mr. Bristow,
Lindsay
I think you're going to be leaving. I'm asking you to leave now, because otherwise I'll name you. I'm not having it, and I've warned you before. It's the same people.
So that's Paul Bristow.
And the same will happen on this side.
The Conservative MP for Peterborough.
Is the Prime Minister seriously suggesting that breaking the economy, breaking public services, losing control of immigration is some sort of carefully crafted plan? His policies are holding working people back, and all he offers is more of the same. But fear not, because speeding into the void left by the Prime Minister comes the Home Secretary.
feeding into
Not
the
with
void.
a plan for skills, growth
Oh, he was
or
pleased with
wages.
that.
No. Her big idea is for British workers to become fruit pickers. Just in case, I can hardly believe she said this, that they forget how to do things. Does the Prime Minister support this let them pick fruit ambition for Britain? Or does he wish he had the strength to give her a career change of her own? Mr. Speaker, I'm sure from the vantage point of his helicopter, everything might look fine. But that's not the lived experience of those on the ground. After 13 years of economic failure across the country, people are paying the price of uncosted, reckless, damaging decisions by the Tory party. And even now, as mortgages go through the roof, the Prime Minister is planning to wave through honours and peerages for those who cause misery for millions. What does it say about this government that while working people are worrying about mortgage hike, paying the bills, even repositions, the Tory party is rewarding those guilty of economic vandalism?
Mr. Speaker, no amount of personal attacks and petty point scoring can disguise the fact that the honourable gentleman does not have a plan for this country, Mr. Speaker. He comes here every week to make the same petty points. We are getting on and delivering for this country. Yes, Mr. Speaker, inflation is a challenge. That's why we are on track to keep reducing it. We are reducing waiting lists. We are stopping the boats, all while he is focused on the past, focused on the politics. It's all talk, whereas from this government and from this Prime Minister, we deliver for the country.
In March, he boasted we are on track to halve inflation by the end of the year. And in May, he then said economic optimism is increasing. Well, given the dire economic reality of today, is it not now clear that he's taken his honesty lessons from Boris Johnson?
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to see the right honourable gentleman here today. I think I'm right in saying that I have the pleasure again next week, 2 weeks on the trot. They really have given up. Every day, 4,000 families' mortgages deals expire, 100,000 more since we last met, and millions more next year. Families are sick with worry about the cost of the Tory mortgage bombshell. Do they still claim to be the party of home ownership?
Good luck with that.
Well, may I begin by associating myself with the Right Honourable Lady's remarks about Lord Bob Kerslake. I knew him from my time in Downing Street. He was a stalwart public servant and he will be missed by many on both sides of this House. It may come as a surprise to the Right Honourable Lady, but actually some leaders trust their deputies to stand in for them.
The first one is, it's about using the private sector more, something we should be very comfortable with. The second quote is, people go as NHS patients to the private sector and we could do more of it. Can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister which quote is from the PM and which is from the Leader of the Opposition?
Well, Mr. Speaker, may I actually just begin by saying genuinely how sorry I was to hear that the Honourable Lady will be standing down at the next election. She and I joined this House at the same time, and I know she has contributed much to her party and to this place. And may I also say, I'm sure she will wish to join me in celebrating His Majesty King Charles receiving the Scottish regalia. I think pretty much as
she doesn't look like she wants to join him and celebrate him. No, she's pulling.
There's always time for a Damascus conversion, Mr. Speaker.
And we did join this place at the same time, and I'm pretty sure we'll be leaving at the same time.
Mr. Speaker, when he said the workforce plan was fully costed, I've never seen the Chancellor more bewildered. It's less than a year since his party crashed the economy with their unfunded spending commitments, and he hasn't learnt a thing. So let me ask it another way. Is his uncosted spending coming from more tax rises, more cuts, or is it just the latest promise to fall from the Tories' magic money tree?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, as I and the Chancellor set out, the plan is fully funded. He'll see that at the autumn statement. But I am pleased. I am pleased he's now interested in fiscal responsibility, because that is very welcome, Mr. Speaker. Because there's an opportunity for us to make sure that this is true conviction. We've just had, Mr. Speaker, in the last week, we've had the recommendations of independent pay review bodies, including for the NHS. Now, I believe the right thing to do was to accept those independent recommendations, but that involves taking difficult and responsible decisions to deliver those pay rises without fueling borrowing, inflation, taxes and debt. But on this crucial issue, Mr. Speaker, while his MPs are back on the picket lines, yet again on this issue, he simply refuses to take a position. It's the same old story. He should stop taking inspiration from his friends outside and unglue himself from the fence.
Who wants to lead the exit? Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, in that burst of nonsense, what you didn't hear was a single word about how he's going to be paying for it. Labour's NHS workforce plan is fully funded by scrapping the non-dom status that he so adores. You know the one?
Yeah, we do.
Non-dom.
I think one or two of you have asked to catch my eye.
Lindsay's back.
You're not going the right way. Keir Starmer.
That's now more interventions than the Leader of the Opposition.
Labour's
Like he knows I'm
plan
here.
is fully funded by scrapping the non-dom status that he so adores. You know the one, the non-dom tax thing, as he calls it, that allows some of the wealthiest people in the country to avoid paying tax here. Is that loophole so important to him that he'd rather have billions in unfunded promises than simply making billionaires pay what they owe?
Mr. Speaker, this is the same policy that has paid, I think, for 5 different things at this point. I think, Mr. Speaker, everybody knows that I'm a fan of doing maths to 18, but the honourable gentleman makes a very strong case for doing maths all the way to 61, quite frankly.
Mr. Speaker, if he's so good at maths, he'd know I'm 60, not 61. The roof of Singlewell Primary School in Gravesend collapsed in May 2018. Thankfully, it happened at the weekend and no children were injured. The concrete ceiling was deemed dangerous and liable to collapse, and everyone knew the problem existed in other schools. Yet the Prime Minister decided to halve the budget for school maintenance just a couple of years later. Does he agree with his Education Secretary that he should be thanked for doing a good job? The school in County Durham was on Labour's building list in 2010. They scrapped it, and now children there are in a crumbling school. The truth is, this crisis is the inevitable result of 13 years of cutting corners, botched jobs, sticking plaster politics. It's the sort of thing you expect from cowboy builders, saying that everyone else is wrong, everyone else is to blame, protesting that they've done an effing good job, even as the ceiling falls in. The difference, Mr. Speaker, is that in this case, the cowboys are running the country. Isn't he ashamed that after 13 years of Tory government, children are cowering under steel supports, stopping their classroom roof falling in?
No more. Just seriously, I will calm down. First session, I understand people are excited to be back at school.
Lindsay,
we expect better behaviour.
Ticking off Tory MPs.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is exactly the kind of political opportunism that we've come to expect from Captain Hindsight over here. Before today, he's never once raised this issue with me across this dispatch box. It wasn't even worthy of a single...
It's the same for this side as well. Can I just say, we're going to have a calmer question times going forward. I want to hear the question, I want to hear the answer.
Prison, schools, China, yet again inaction man fails to heed the warning and then blames everyone else for the consequences. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, the Home Secretary celebrated her first anniversary in post. That is, if you overlook the 6 days she missed when she was deemed a national security risk. In that year, 40,000 people have crossed the Channel on a small boat, and the taxpayer is now spending £6 million a day on hotel bills. He's failing to stop terrorists strolling out of prison, failing to guard Britain against hostile actors. He's completely failing to stop the boats. How can anyone trust him to protect the country?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he talks about trust. He talks about action. Just today, this government is taking action to reform defective EU laws to unlock over 100,000 homes, boosting our economy, supporting jobs and ensuring that we can realise the aspirations of homeowners. Now, he talks about trust. He tried in this House to talk the talk on house building. But at the first sign of a cheap political hit, what did he do? He's caved in, Mr. Speaker. Rather than make the right long-term decisions for the country, he's taken the easy way out. It is typical of the principles-free, conviction-free type of leadership that he offers. Flip-flopping from being a builder to a blocker. Mr. Speaker, the British public can't trust a word he says.
Can I start by welcoming the new member for Mid-Bedfordshire? The first Labour MP ever to represent those beautiful towns and villages. He defied the odds, history, and, of course, the fantasy Lib Dem bar charts. Can I also welcome the new member for Tamworth? She will be a powerful representative for her constituents. Is the Prime Minister as relieved as I am that those constituents are not burdened with his defeated candidate who told them, don't worry, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to sanitise this, to F off if they're struggling with the cost of living?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of what this government is doing to support the most vulnerable over the past year. But, Mr. Speaker, can I in fact join him in welcoming the new members to their places? After all, I suspect the new member for Mid-Beds may actually support me a little bit more than the last one.
Never mind the British Museum, it's the Prime Minister who's obviously lost his marbles. Mr. Speaker, the Greek Prime Minister came to London to meet him, a fellow NATO member, an economic ally, one of our most important partners in tackling illegal immigration. But instead of using that meeting to discuss those serious issues, he tried to humiliate him and cancelled at the last minute. Why such small politics, Prime Minister?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course, we're always happy to discuss important topics of substance with our allies, like tackling illegal migration or indeed strengthening our security. But when it was clear that the purpose of a meeting was not to discuss substantive issues for the future, but rather to grandstand and relitigate issues of the past, it wasn't appropriate. But furthermore, when specific commitments and specific assurances on that topic were made to this country and then were broken, it may seem alien to him, but my view is when people make commitments, they should keep them.
Sir Keir Starmer. Lindsay Hall's got
Madam Deputy Speaker, I would say that this treaty's got more holes in than a Swiss cheese, but I don't want to wind up the Prime Minister by talking about a European country again. Madam Deputy Speaker, you have to give credit to the Rwandan government.
For that.
They saw this Prime Minister coming a mile off. You can only imagine their delight, their sheer disbelief, when having already banked £140 million of British taxpayer money without housing a single asylum seeker, the Prime Minister appears again with another offer they can't refuse. A gimmick that will send taxpayers' money to Rwanda, refugees from Rwanda to Britain, and won't stop the boats. There was mention of Margaret Thatcher earlier. Madam Deputy Speaker.
Keir Starmer, of course, wrote that article about her at the weekend. About Margaret Thatcher at the weekend.
There's understandable excitement about the mention of the name. but the House must listen to the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer.
Party go from up yours to laws to take our money, Kigami.
Oh dear.
I think we need a groanometer. Forget the bell.
Mr. Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, when it comes to this European thing and Margaret Thatcher, this is the week that the Shadow Foreign Secretary, I think, didn't rule out rejoining the European Union. He can role-play Margaret Thatcher all he wants, but when it comes to Europe, his answer's the same. Yes, yes, yes! When there was an opportunity in this House, Mr. Speaker, in this House, to back our plans to reform defective EU laws, to unlock 100,000 new homes, Mr. Speaker, what did he do? What did he do? He went in front of the cameras and said one thing and came in here and blocked it. Typical shameless opportunism.
So, well, come on. Who was it who said he's a really bad politician? Hands up. They're shouting. Well, what about inexperienced? Who was that? Or, and now there's got to be some hands for this, he's got to go. Oh, shy. Apparently, he's holding a Christmas party next week.
Order! It's Christmas. No, but you might not want the Christmas present that I could give you. So please, here's Starmer.
Lindsay Hall, they're really cutting and
Apparently
ruining
he's holding
his
a
flow.
Christmas party next week. How's the invite list looking?